Welcome to the Soul Perspective Podcast. Our goal is to help people remember that at our core, we are not human beings living a spiritual life, but spiritual beings living a human life. With this soul perspective, we intend to offer the awareness and tools to navigate the highs and lows of this amazing but challenging reality we live in. Sit back, relax, and place an intention to open your heart and mind so that together we can explore the depths of human consciousness and potential, as well as our place and purpose in the universe and beyond. Let's remember who we are. We are eternal. We are divine. We are love. We are one. We are. If this resonates, please like, subscribe, and share with anyone you feel could benefit from this perspective. If not, we extend deep gratitude to all viewpoints because each one is equally valuable and deserves a chance to be respected, grow, and blossom in its own way to expand our collective consciousness. Thank you. The teachers always told her that I was quite the storyteller, and I would, have all these stories to talk about, just the imagination and crazy things, and the kids would all, like they said, they would just all be enthralled by what I was talking about. Ended up going to Purdue University, as you can see with the hat, and I studied aerospace engineering. Went into that with the hope of, I guess, eventually, exploring the stars or going out and traveling through space. It was beautiful day moon on 11/5/2022. I remember the date. So one thread, or the thread with these advanced civilizations that are able to navigate through light years of travel in a reasonable amount of time, um, are using consciousness. Consciousness is the key, and they're very spiritually awakened civilizations. Once you start to fix within, the without what's outside will change.
Like everyone, I believe anyway, is born knowing their path and their soul path. And you expressed that you had interest in the stars and you're, curious, naturally curious about that path in your life.
But I wasn't asleep. I was clearly awake, but I saw her sitting there as she always did, politely, but she was doing this with her paw. And I thought, is she waving goodbye? You feel pulled to go somewhere, or you feel an opportunity to go meet some people, do it and see what happens.
Welcome to the Soul Perspective podcast. I'm Gina and this is Jeff. Hi, Jeff.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Happy Monday for you, Sunday for me.
That's right. Jeff, it's all about you today, and I can't wait to deep dive into your spiritual awakening, because spiritual awakenings are different for every single person. And it's really important to understand that and gain perspective on the fact that it can be so dramatically different for every single person. Can we go into exploring your spiritual awakening, and who were you beforehand? How would you describe your life before the spiritual awakening?
Well, thank you, Gina. And I agree 100%. We all have our own journey, and that's the beautiful part of being here and living on Earth in this, school, if you will, of learning. So, yeah, so for me, I started off as a young boy, I think kind of on the path that I'm on now, but I didn't obviously realize it as a young child. But looking back, some of the stories, and I don't remember a detail. I do remember, nursery schools and kindergartens and things like that have images of those times and visions of that and memories, of course. But I don't remember all the detail. But my mom has told me multiple times in my life that the teachers always told her that I was quite the storyteller, and I would, have all these stories to talk about, just the imagination and crazy things, and the kids would all, like they said, they would just all be enthralled by what I was talking about, and where I it was way out there, I guess. I don't know. I always used to love to play with little figures and characters and make up stories and things of that nature. But, I thought that's just normal childhood imagination. So, fast forward into going to school and getting into I'll say the machine of life that we get, and the normal train of life that many of us are kind of indoctrinated into, and the path that many people, that aren't awakened yet, I would say, are on. the programming that we kind of go through. I got focused on school and getting good grades, and I had an older brother that was, excelled, and so of course I was always a very competitive child, and if he did that, I can do that, and so I got really focused on school, and doing really well, and I ended up doing pretty well. I ended up going to Purdue University, as you can see with the hat, and I studied aerospace engineering. Um, I always had a fascination, though, as a young child, or I say as a young teenager, maybe even preteen and then teenager, with the stars and with traveling through space. And that's why I wanted to study aerospace engineering. And finally, when I decided, okay, yeah, I'm going to have the grades and I'm going to have, take all the appropriate courses and the honor stuff and be ready. And I grew up in a state where, the university, one of the state universities is Purdue. And so it was a perfect fit. And so I went into that with the hope of, I guess, eventually, exploring the stars or going out and traveling through space or whatever. I didn't really necessarily want to be an astronaut per se because I always have had challenges with my vision. So I had to wear contacts, and you can't really be an astronaut if you have any kind of vision impairments, or have to wear glasses or contacts. That may be different now, obviously, with the eye surgery and things like that that are available. But at the time, so I knew I really couldn't be an astronaut, but I always wanted to, explore space. And so I finished high school. I get graduated high in my class. I got to Purdue. I studied there, aerospace engineering. I got the degree. I started off while I was at Purdue. I got a chance to get experience in the field and work. So I was in what was called a co-op program. So I could work for a semester, then go to school for a semester, work, school, work, school. So I had almost a year and a half, 2 years of experience when I graduated. And what I learned during that time was that, most of the money that goes into the aerospace industry was about around defense and weapons and satellites, spying satellites. There was GPS. I did work on the GPS project at one point, um, for navigation and things like that. But most of it's, about defense and weapons and things of that. And so then when I graduated, I kind of really, I graduated, took a job, but it, I knew deep down, I think even then, that it really wasn't the right fit, but it was what I had my degree in. I wanted to go ahead and follow that. A few months after that, or maybe a year or so after that, the industry started to really tighten the budgets in for aerospace, and so I think it was the universe looking back. It was the universe telling me, hey, if you're not going to do something on your own, we're going to kick you in the butt. And so I was one of the ones that got laid off. I was one of the newbies on the block, and being one of the newbies, and they were cutting back. Come to find out later, we'll talk about this in a future podcast, that they're really spending money. They just weren't spending it in the public facing world, right? So that part that I was in was getting cutbacks, and so I was laid off. So I took a little time. I went to Australia, close to you there, and took a little time to visit that. Did some traveling, and did some soul searching, and knew I had experience with computers, a lot of experience with computers, and so I figured, well, I'll follow that lead. And again, it was still very much what a lot of people would do in life, is to try to attain success in something, right? To turn it to a job and make a lot of money, and so on and so forth, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that was the path that I got focused on. And so I came back, worked hard on getting some certifications in computer technologies, and got a job in that, and have been working in that field ever since. Basically, computers, software solutions. I've been working for a large corporation for almost 30 years. So, um, and along on that path, I mean, I've loved the job for many years, and but somewhere along the way, I started to realize in the last couple years that I have another calling, and I don't know what that entails yet, but
Sounds like
so,
your soul awakening is coming through in the last like 3 or 4 years as this kind of shift in your perspective is happening.
yeah,
So
yeah. So I mean. just to kind of finish that thought, like I did the normal thing that many people do. I got married, I had a couple children, accumulated income and 401ks and all that kind of stuff, the focus that many of us are on. But in the last couple years, I just started to get this pull, and it really started with a pull for something else. And it happened, I even know the date. I think that it triggered or something I saw triggered the initial wake up call, if you will, that, okay, now it's time to start thinking about what you're really here to do, or maybe, in addition to what you're doing now, something you need to follow and go down a different path or add this to your current path or whatever. And so what it was is I saw this beautiful day moon on 11/5/2022. I remember the date. So, I was driving back. I dropped my daughter off at school. I was driving back to the house, and this moon just looked, it was the daytime, but the moon was a full moon, and it was just brilliant and beautiful and looked bigger than I'd ever seen it. And, looking back, I can say I think that was the trigger. At the time, I was like, wow, that's cool. That's, neat. But there was something I think that was an awakening. And so soon after that, I read a science fiction book about UFOs. And it was at the end of that book, it was a great book, a great story. And in the story, there was a lot of stuff. The vehicles that they used that were extraterrestrial influenced were the Tic Tac type vehicles. So at the end, and that some people may be familiar with the Tic Tacs. I'll get into that in a second. But if you're not, maybe you will after I explain in a second. But essentially, so they use these vehicles. They're amazing. They could fly at ridiculous speeds, travel through, all mediums and so on and so forth in the book. And at the end of the book, this author always, that's one of the reasons I liked him. He would explain in all of his books, like what is real. In other words, what has something to back it up that people have witnessed or seen or documented, and what is he made up. So at the end of the book, he talked about the Tic Tacs were real, and he referenced this now pretty famous Nimitz battle group that witnessed these Tic Tac shaped craft that were near off the coast of San Diego. The battle group was doing some exercises, and they saw these craft, and they had some Top Gun pilots that were out, Navy pilots that were flying around, and they witnessed these things, and they did these Tic Tac shaped craft, did these amazing, pulled these amazing maneuvers, and went, I don't know, 60 miles in a matter of seconds. Showed up on radar 60 miles away. Just all this stuff. I was like, wow. So I started to follow that thread. I'm like, this is interesting. Um, and so then I started to look for information about, like, wait a minute, there's something going on here that I don't understand. So I started watching some stuff and reading some more books and series on History Channel. I'm forgetting the name of it, but on that they talked about the Tic Tacs and other craft that are flying around. We don't know what they are. They could be this, they could be that. Um, and that didn't really jive with me, but again, like not knowing, but it definitely created an interest in that. And as I was researching this stuff, all of a sudden, somebody named Dr. Stephen Greer showed up in my YouTube feed, and I was like, "Oh, who's this guy?" And I listened to a couple, I'll say podcasts. They weren't really podcasts; they were just interviews of him, and he clearly understood what these were and other craft, and he had an explanation, and he said, and by the way, been doing this for a long time, and I've have insiders that have fed me this information, and whistleblowers and all kinds of stuff, which again I've researched over the last few years, and I truly believe a lot of that is true. So he, in addition to, I guess we'll get to the point here in a second, but in addition to talking about the craft and the covert programs that are, developing this craft by humans on the planet and with technologies that would change everything and X, Y, Z, blah, 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 he also talked about the consciousness of the craft and the extraterrestrial ones, the ones that aren't from here, the ones that aren't man-made or reverse engineered, the ones that come from other planets or, other dimensions, whatever all the above, through other dimensions to come here. it talked about the common thread or the thread with these advanced civilizations that are able to navigate through light years of travel in a reasonable amount of time, um, are using consciousness. Consciousness is the key, and they're very spiritually awakened civilizations that are not destroying their biosphere. They're not, killing each other. They're peaceful in general. And so I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then the consciousness, and he said, and that's the key is the consciousness. The science of consciousness is the key. And the covert programs all know this. It's, yeah, the craft that can defy gravity and all that stuff that can fly at high speeds are amazing and this and that and the other thing. But the real scientific breakthroughs that our civilization needs are based on consciousness. And I'm like, wow, consciousness. Now, back up a second. When I was in my teens, I kind of pulled away from spirituality. Grew up in church, and I at some point in my teenage years, I got focused on science and technology, and just, it's like, well, all that stuff is whatever. I didn't, and I felt like, not this is for me. This is not necessarily for everyone, but I just felt like the organized religion wasn't fulfilling for me. It wasn't working. I love the community aspect of the churches and what they do for in the communities and things like that. But I felt like some of the teachings just went never felt right for me deep down. And so I kind of pushed all of that away because I got focused on science and technology, like a lot of folks that are in that space, kind of like, oh, well, that's, there's science here and then there's spirituality over here and they can't mix. Well, I don't agree with that anymore, but for many years of my life, that was the case. So fast forward to this realizing that consciousness and connection to God source the creator of everything and this universe and all universes and so on and so forth, that connection is through us, like we and that consciousness connection, and we are connected all together, and so I was like, what is this? And I started to slowly follow that part of it, but I was still very hung up in the disclosure and getting this information out, and we got to do this. We got these technologies that are hidden that would change the planet. We got to focus on that. And it wasn't really, I mean, it was productive. And then I was learning a lot of stuff and learning about the technologies because that's, for me being a science and computer, geek, if you will, um, that whole thing was what drew me in. But once I got in and I started to realize, well, yeah, this is getting me more angry about, or not angry per se, but upset and focusing on the wrong thing. Like, oh, it's their fault. They're doing this. They're doing that. They're hiding this from this. They're preventing that. And somewhere along the way, probably about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, I started to just I started meditating, things like that, of course, because, that's the key and to connecting, to your higher conscious or to your higher self, that collective consciousness. Some people call it the Akashic record. There's all these names. It really doesn't matter what you name it. It's just a collective consciousness that we all, I think it's in the spirit realm or spirit world or the world between lives that we live, where we truly come from and go to when we pass or transition. I started the meditation and I realized somewhere along the way, I started to get this little thread. It was quiet. It was like a whisper, but it's like, stop blaming, stop looking out, start to look within. Because once you start to fix within, what's outside will change. And there's all these hermetic principles and other things with as within, so without, and all this other stuff. So that started to come through a little bit. About a year ago, I went to something called the Conscious Life Expo, and so I started that change, and then I went to this Conscious Life Expo, and at the event, there was a medium there. Now, I didn't talk about this earlier, but my dad passed away in 2010. I couldn't make it back in time to see him because I was out here in California working, and I was like, okay, well, let me know when it looks really bad, and then I'll go because I gotta do my job, I gotta work hard, that whole mentality. And And so I got the plane ride, but by the time I got back, he had passed. It was the winter time, February there in Indiana, and it was just travel was delayed, planes delayed, getting off the plane was delayed. In any case, when I got to the house, he had passed, and that always had bothered me a little bit, sometimes more than others, But so I went to see this at the event. They had a medium there that puts you in contact with your loved ones. I went to a session where she was up in front and people were raising their hands and they wanted to connect to their loved one. And I watched her do it for so many people in the room. And I had my hand raised, of course. It's not like I didn't want to be, part of those, but there were so many people that I just didn't get picked during that session. But I could see how hard she was truly trying to connect, and how important it was for her to be legitimately connecting and seeing the faces of the people in the room when she was connecting and how they're like, wow, there's something here. So fast forward to the next day. I didn't get picked, by the way. Darn it. Typical. Just kidding. But the next day, was walking around in between sessions and I saw her booth and I'm like, you know what? I should just go and, pay the money and just, see what my dad's spirit has to say. Um, so I did eventually, after thinking about it for a while, as I often do. And so I went down and I sat down, and I'm not going to get into the detail, but it was clear that to me that she was connecting to my dad's spirit. There was too much there that she could describe him, and I've never talked to this person in my life. She could describe, where in his body was the cause, because, she kind of said it's like looking through a long hallway that's kind of murky. And so it's not like she's hearing voices when she connects. It's more like they're giving signs and signals and almost like telepathically connecting to her in some way, but it's not always clear. But so she said where it was in his body that caused, and so she kind of pointed to that and all these other things, like I said, how funny he was and exactly how he looked when he was younger and when he was older. Just all these things. And I was like, I am talking to my dad through her. And he had some interesting things to say so he said, what I wanted to do, don't stop there. You can do so much more. But he also brought up a couple things. He said, or his spirit said, Tuesday something's going to happen. This was on a Sunday. So I'm like, Tuesday's gonna happen, something's gonna happen. All right. So let's see what happens on Tuesday. Well, Tuesday rolls around. First off, I have this dream I clearly think was a remembrance of another life. Perhaps we'll cover that in a future podcast when we talk about, hopefully at some point we'll do one about past life regressions. But there was some stuff there. But then during the day, we started to have, I was taking an AI class, certification class, and um, my son was in the kitchen and all of a sudden, Dad, there's water. There's water. I'm like, yeah, there's water, man. Just fill yourself. I'm in the class. Stop bothering me. No, no, Dad, there's water. So all right, I run down to the kitchen and there's water dripping through between, it was like the door for the back patio. There was water dripping through the trim. It was just like coming down like raindrops, and it was just drip, 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 and it was like, oh, we got a leak. And so the typical me, still somewhat in the mentality of, like, oh, this is going to cost us all this money, da 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 da. Um, I was like, all right, well, if this what you meant, Dad, I hope I hope there's something here. But anyway, so. Um, that night, again, that whole day and that night, I couldn't sleep. I struggled with the whole idea of there's water dripping through, what's going to cost us all this money. And I'm like, okay, there's a lesson here. There's a lesson. I think that's why that's what he was talking about. There's a lesson to learn from this. And the next morning, I finally, I couldn't sleep well, but I did wake up. When I woke up, I finally said, I'm going to let it go. I'm just, why do I care about the money so much? Something's going to happen. It's going to work its way out, whatever. So within that, from that moment when I truly let it go, not just said it, but actually believed it, I would say within 30 minutes, three things happened. One, I got an email from Costco like, "Hey, you got your reward certificate coming in the mail. Here you get it." I got this thing from my ZPE group, which we'll talk about another thing, but one of my volunteer groups that I'm a part of that said, "Hey, we're going to be teaching you how to use was it telepathy? I'm trying to remember how to tap into to win the lottery, right? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to go win the lottery, but use some of our psi abilities to connect. And there was going to be a special session on that. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Like, and this is within a matter of minutes of each other. I'm like, okay, so I'm letting it go, and I'm getting all these signs that hey, don't worry about the money. There's ways that money can come in. And the third was I called, during a break, I called the guys that had redone our bathroom that were going to have to fix the bathroom now that they tore up and fixed the leak and everything. And he's like, "Well, you should file an insurance claim with this." I'm like, "I didn't think I could file an insurance claim because this was not a gusher but a dripper." And he's like, "Oh no, you should file it." And so I'm like, "Okay, maybe that's the clear avenue." So I call insurance, and I swear it was the best insurance experience I've ever had. In terms of, yeah, we'll send somebody. Yeah, we'll take a look. We're gonna write you a check. I mean, it was just boom.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, there's something. This as soon as you let it go and trust,
Mm-hmm.
the universe, God, source, prime creator provides.
Yeah.
So that to me was the lesson that I needed to learn. One other thing that happened during that week that was even more profound to me was during that week, again after the conference, and I was in the eye training Thursday night. Well, Wednesday was when they came to the plumber was coming out to take a look and fix the leak, and the bathroom was a bit of a mess. It's the kids' bathroom, so I wanted to clean it up, and my daughter was sick, and so like I cleaned it up, but I was doing this in between class and whatever, so I didn't properly wash my hands and all that stuff. So I picked up what my daughter had, I think. And Thursday night, it really hit me hard. I to the point where I started to get a fever. I started to get really sick. And I'm like, I can't be sick. I mean, tomorrow's the last day of the class, and it's very important, and I don't want to be sick. And this is so I sat on the recliner couch, and I went to meditation after I finished class, and I went into this deep meditation. And because I had just connected with my dad, I felt like that connection was, and I think it's here all the time, by the way. And I'm not saying that, you need that to, I think they're here when we need,
Yeah.
but that's a side note. Um, when I was laying there, I felt his presence, and not just his presence, but many of my other relatives that I knew, my grandfather, my grandmother, my great aunt who was like a grandmother, my great uncle, another great aunt, so all these relatives that it felt like they were there. And as I was in this meditation, I asked, is there anything, you can help me with this? And I felt this flow of, I don't know how to call it, this beautiful, blissful feeling of energy flow through my body, like something energetically was passing through me. Now, do I know exactly what that was? No, for sure, but I do think when I lead with the heart mind, I think it was their energy flowing through me because I asked, was that you? And I got this, not like a yes, Jeff. It was more like a yeah, and some of your other relatives would like to do the same. I'm like, oh, please. So then my great aunt and my grandma and they went through the list, and they went through. I felt that over and over and over again. And then when I came out of meditation, um, I mean, it was a deep meditation. When I came out, everything, it was daylight when I went, and then it was dark, and everybody was in bed in the house when I came out of it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just, because I was sneezing, coughing, and whatever. I didn't want to, mess with anybody else. So I laid on a futon in the family room, and I still had the fever, but I could feel like my everything was hot, like my whole body was burning up. So I laid down, and within a half an hour, it burned off. The fever was gone, all the sickness was gone, everything was completely gone. So if I look at the total timeline there, we're talking like 5 or 6 where I was really starting to get sick. I mean, before that was just sniffles and coughs, or not really coughs, sneezes and congestion and whatever. And by 11, 12 o'clock at night, it was gone. So, and that's, it could have just been, you could say, that was just coincidental and, my body fought it off. And I think ultimately it did was my body that fought it off. But was it from the going through this experience of connecting and realizing that there's more than just the physical body and that can be used for healing? You,
Mm.
I should be asking you that, but but anyway, so yeah, so that those experiences really started to kick me into another gear. And then synchronicities started to pick up. I started to take more courses, and things of that people that I met. I took some classes from that. I started to do my own. I really started to get serious about meditation. In other words, do it multiple times a day. And there's some other interesting things that happened that I'll bring up that I think is, because the point of this for those of you out there, and I'm rambling on a bit, but I think number one, this can happen anytime in your life, right? You could be focused on the career and the business life and being successful or whatever it is, and then later in life something clicks. It could be something little. It could be looking at a moon. It could be looking at somebody's necklace, and there's a it like it flat there's a certain light that flashes and it triggers something and you don't realize it yet, but if ultimately you start down a path and you read a book or you talk to somebody and it triggers this or that or the other thing. So that's kind of why we're taking the time to go through my life, to give you that, those of
Let's
you out
kind
there
of
that,
talk about that a little bit more, kind of like summarize that, because and then we can go more into like the synchronicities and kind of the impact that it's had on your life as well. Because you were born, like everyone, I believe anyway, is born knowing their path and their soul path. And you expressed that you had interest in the stars and you're, curious, naturally curious about that path in your life.
hmm
Got a little sidelined and distracted with our matrix in terms of going into competition rather than cooperation, like competing, getting
hmm
good grades, being in competition with your brother. Whereas the spiritual alignment is more in cooperation with all that exists. So then that kind of starts to show that you go a little sidelined, like a little off your soul alignment, and you start going more into the matrix and what society expects of you. And then you describe that beautiful activation moment of the moon activating something within you that allowed you to go more into soul alignment again. And as you went back into soul alignment, that's when you start to kind of go back into your path and have more connection with everything around you. And one
hmm
way that that showed in your life was connection to your ancestors, which
hmm
is definitely something that happens for many people when they start to go through a soul awakening or a soul alignment, as they start to realize, wow, I am connected to so much more than just the materialism that I've become used to. So ancestors came in through different synchronicities, as you explained. And also, you started to explore your curiosities that you were born with, like space and stars, but in a different way. So, not through the
hmm
matrix lens, but through the natural kind of soul lens of actually being curious about extraterrestrial vehicles, craft, and exploring that path, and which is really, really fascinating because it's amazing. Because when you go through this, you also express some different emotions around, a little bit of kind of anger and things around discovering disclosure. And these emotions do come up for people who have, for a while, like years or decades, actually been off their soul alignment and more in the matrix, because there is an actual grieving process and then a bit of anger and so forth that you
hmm
feel, because it feels like, oh, I'm here for the human experience. And I've only just realized that I've lost a couple of decades to the matrix or to someone else's vision of how the world is meant to be, rather than following my soul path and living out the human experience that I agreed to come to do. And then
Yeah.
you go through the natural kind of grief and anger, but like you say, you then go through it deeper in terms of forgiveness, you stop the blame, and you start getting back on track and just living authentically. Um,
Yeah.
so I love that. I love that because it is a really kind of common thread that many people can relate to. Or if people are listening and have not actually started to go back into their natural soul alignment, then the awakening can look like so many different things, but definitely kind of be aware of that kind of activation moment, and then you starting to see the world differently and having these
Hmm.
different things kind of reintroduce themselves to you. And it feels familiar, right? Like it's like when you started to go into disclosure or looking at craft and how they're made and all these different kind of technologies, it's like it's probably very familiar to you, not just because you studied aerospace engineering, but because you were born with that curiosity and knowing that you wanted to be involved in space somehow. um,
Like you said, you nailed it. I was, I still feel it to some extent. Like I was cheated out of what I really, because if we think about it, if these programs were available and the technologies that are, behind secret, programs, if those were available in, when they had the technology, we would be traveling through the stars. If we were peaceful enough, we would be doing what I came, or what I feel like I came here to do potentially, and following that dream that I had. So, but then I realized, well, I signed up for this. I came here during this time to do this and to go through this, and to look in within why perhaps that I didn't have that, why that, the time I'm on, why I, instead of getting angry at somebody else, look within and say, what is it within me that wasn't ready for it in at that time? And that's, I feel like that's a reflection. The world's going to reflect back what you have inside of you. So, um, that's to say, that was part of the awakening process, and I'm still ongoing. Like it's not like it's a straight uphill, like once you start on it, you're going up and up and up, and it's all great. You have days where you just like feel like, oh my gosh, the weight of the world, and financial, that I'm not saying it's a smooth up. Once you awaken, it's, you're going to have days up and down, but if you can have a place to go back and quiet the mind and remember that you're always protected and guided, and trust in that, which I think was some of those messages I talked about earlier, about when I finally let go, things were there to pick me up and help out. And it wasn't, it wasn't like I won the lottery, but it was somebody, like I was helped out financially. We were helped out financially with the leak that came through, and it was, a lot of it was taken care of. So, like, some of it's not going to always come in the way you think. Abundance isn't just money. Abundance is all kinds of things, of love, of, connection, cooperation, creativity, creative ideas. It's all these things that create abundance. And when we start to open up and realize that's what makes us fulfilled, instead of, I have a bunch of money in the bank, then, and that's what that, I'd say that because that was the mentality I came with. Well, I only feel secure if I have a bunch of money in the bank and I've got financial security, whatever. And I don't say I've thrown that out completely, because I did, there are days where I wake up and I struggle with that. And I'm telling that for the audience, like, hey, it's not all smooth sailing. You're gonna have days where are still thinking about that.
Mm,
But if you start to open up more, those days will become less stressful, and you'll start to notice more of the things that are coming your way, and that you're always surrounded. I think, I'll talk about some things in a bit, but, I think there are ways that you can learn to connect and realize that you have somebody with you all the time, whether it's one, two, five, support, soul family, spirit, or, ancestral family, um, star family, angels, spirit guides, whatever you want to call it, or whatever the mix is, they're always there to help you and nudge you, but not get in the way, right? Because ultimately we have to decide on the path that we take. I think we came here with a plan and we have a strategy. When you get way off, you get kind of knocked back on course, but you still have to free will make the choice that I'm going to do this. And when an opportunity comes, you have to take advantage of it. It's not going to be handed to you.
mm.
A creative idea, follow it, create a podcast.
Well, I love
Um,
that. It's all about staying in flow. And like you say, realizing that you're supported. There's a lot of unseen support. It's not just about what you can see in our current realm or reality. And we are all here on the human experience. There are ebbs and flows, no matter what kind of system you're in, whether you're in your soul alignment or whether you're in the matrix, whatever system, there's ebbs and flows. But once you're aware and awakened, things flow and you trust, and there's less stress involved because you are just going with it, knowing that you're supported. But like you say, it's not always like, rainbows and unicorns. It's not all the like fluffy, like sweet stuff. It can be quite rough.
yeah.
And maybe we can talk a little bit about the reality too, because as people awaken, it can really change their life and have quite an impact on their how they feel about their current work situation, how they feel about the relationships, whether it's work relationships, family relationships, intimate relationships, friendships. How sometimes it just how you feel, where you live. Think there's so many changes that happen during
Hmm.
someone's awakening. It can be quite the ride. So are you
Yes.
willing to be open about any of the kind of impact in your life that you've noticed after this awakening's kind of happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to touch on a couple things though, that one of them was a physical, I could actually see a physical change in my biological body
Wow.
that happened. So I would say somewhere in my teenage years, probably when I said spirituality go away. I don't know exactly, but I know somewhere I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to the mall with a friend, and they did, they had like a health check there and whatever, and they were checking all this stuff, and they checked heart rate. My heart rate was really, in the mid 40s, mid to low 40s.
Wow.
And they're like, "Do you exercise?" I'm like, "Yeah, I play basketball or whatever, so okay, yeah, then everything's good."
Mm-hmm.
So you're just really fit and really in shape. And so from that point on, just every time I would go see a new doctor, especially because after, that I'd get the interview, okay, well, that's just where that's your normal.
Mm.
But over and over again, it was always like low mid 40s. And then they started to create these watches and things like that you wear, and you can track all the time. I was always in the low 40s for a heart rate. And very interesting that, and I just that was just the normal for me. And it kind of made me think, okay, is there something wrong? Is there a problem? Because that's kind of what like a Lance Armstrong or somebody that's, I mean, I play sports and I'm active, but I'm not like someone like that that's fitness training 8, 10 hours a day. So why is my heart rate so low? And so fast forward to about a year ago, soon after this awakening, I started to really kick it into a higher gear, and the connection with the ancestors and some of the other things that happened. After that, my heart rate went up to like low or high 50s, low 60s, and it's been that way ever since. So I'm like, okay, not to say, but if I look at that, I read that as I was asleep. Now I'm
Mm.
awake. And my heart, which is the gateway to all of that, is like, okay, now we're ready. It was, to me, if I look back, it was a sign, okay, you're going to be asleep. We're going to just slow down and just go through this. All right. But when you awaken, we're going to go back and we're going to kick it in. And so
Wow,
there's
that is
other,
powerful. That is so profound.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, what the heck? And then, in addition to that, like some of my meditations, now I'll feel my heart. It's not just the beat, it's like a pulse of energy that I've learned how to almost direct it. Like this pulse of energy I first noticed it when I was meditating, and it would go up to my third eye. It was like heart to third eye, heart to third eye, heart to third eye. It was like a pulse of energy, like boo, doo, doo. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I can send that out, through my crown to the world. So then I would sit there and there'd be meditations where I'd sit there and say, okay, I'm just going to send love to the world. And I would just spend 30, 45 minutes of pulsing this energy out through the crown to wherever it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to notice I can use it if I have like a pain in my hand, or right now I have a pain in my shoulder. So I'll be doing that tonight because I play volleyball and I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So, you start to get the weekend warrior thing. Those of you that are weekend warriors know what I'm talking about. So there's always an injury. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to pulse that tonight and see. But it's just interesting that it's like, is this coming alive? I'm these what I would have thought is just random whatevers in the past. I'm starting to be curious about them. Like, hey, what is this? This is probably an ability, a gift that I have that I need to, pull that thread and follow that a little bit more. So I embrace those things now instead of saying, "Oh, that's just coincidental." Like, the healing that happened. I truly believe that that was, and it's happened since then. In fact, I won't, want to keep talking about the same thing over, but it happened at Christmas. Also started to get sick. I'm like, I wasn't my ancestors. It was just me this time. Like, I want to feel the energy flow through. Did the next that night and the next day, what was brewing up to be a bad cold was gone.
Yeah, I love
So,
that. The universe just comes along and keeps teaching us the lessons that we need to know to keep building our confidence and trust in the fact that we have everything we need. We're our own best healers. We can use the universal life force to heal, as well as to keep us in alignment, to open our consciousness up to what we need to see or become aware of. I love those stories and the self healing abilities. It's like we all have those abilities too. It's not just sort of random people here and there. But once you become aware and on your spiritual awakening, you start to realize, oh, I've got all these kind of ways I can use my universal life force and my consciousness to do all sorts of things. Um,
right.
so I love that. I love that, right? And because you've had, have you become aware or awakened to any other type of cities or ways of using your consciousness to, like you've talked about healing, but what else have you become aware of?
To me, I I would say I have my intuition has kicked into
Mm-hmm.
a higher gear, or some people call it an inner knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I was reading through my astrology chart that my sister did for me over Christmas, it's like your BS detector is off the, like it was not quite how they put it, but like
Mm-hmm.
so like I feel like I have so when I follow a thread and I feel like I can trust, and I think this is true with everyone, like you can trust that your higher self is going to guide you if you listen to it to the path or what you need to know in life. And for me, I need to know the truth, as much truth about the reality of what's going on as others. Others don't need that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with not having that level of awareness. Everybody's on their own path, and we need to respect. We're all sovereign souls that need the opportunity to learn the lessons we came here to learn. Um, but for me, because it said I need to, and that's why I'm not saying I'm like gonna become an astrologist, but when I read stuff that is in alignment with the stuff that I'm feeling inside, um, and it said, you want to seek the truth, you want to dig and dive and find the truth, and your BS detector, I don't know if I use BS detector, but I'm using that, is off the charts, and so trust that. And so I have had a lot of things come through. That, whether through dreams, most of the time it's through when I'm kind of waking up in the morning or I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm not back asleep. Sometimes it's when I'm transitioning from sleep to awake. It's oftentimes the middle of the night or morning time. I'll have these thoughts that come through. And there's so many, I can't cover them all, but one recently, which I think was something you were going to ask me about, so I'm going to dive ahead, is about the passing of our beloved Suki. She was a dog
Who
that
was the dog? Yep.
she was our dog for 13 years. We rescued her when she was about 10 to 12 months old. You never know for sure the age, but they give you an estimate. So we had her for over 12 years. And she picked or contracted cancer about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And they told us she had about 9 months to live. So she lived to September, it'd be the end of it. Um, and she kept going like she lived longer, but about a week ago, in fact it was exactly a week ago, well, a little over a week ago, I took her for a long walk, and when I came back she was really struggling breathing, and she couldn't even go into the house. She just kind of laid in the driveway. Then we slowly got her into the house, and it was bad. So I left the house because I'm not living at the house anymore. Long story, but anyway, and so she apparently didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I found out that she was struggling with breathing and having a lot of problems. And it really looks like we need to, think about putting her out of her pain and her suffering, and her suffering, because you could just see the strain and the frequency of the breath was, and you could hear it, and it was tough for her to, So anyway, I came back Saturday afternoon. We thought about it, and hung out with her all afternoon. Tried to take her for a walk. Could only go about a half a block, and that's all that she was able to do. And then so make a long story short, Sunday rolled around, like we brought somebody out to the house and put her down. So Sunday night, go to sleep. I wake up again in the middle of the night. Eyes are closed, but I have this vision of being something running through a forest with trees, thin trees, not bamboo, because but it was like thin trees on the sides. There was a pathway, and I was like I was the perspective of something running through this forest with a pathway and
Mm-hmm.
fast. And I got this sensation that I was seeing Suki where what she was experiencing, now that she's free of the body and whatever she's going through. So I woke up in the morning and I was going to do a ceremonial walk at the beach. I was going to carry her leash with me and just walk the normal path that I walk with the beach, on the beach with her. Dogs aren't allowed on the beach where I live, so but since she wasn't with me, I thought I'd walk along the beach. But anyway, on my way down there, I literally see there was a lady that was walking this way, and I was walking down the hill to get to the beach, and the dog looked exactly like Suki. I mean,
Wow.
it was so I like chased the lady and caught up to her, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and she saw me holding a leash, so that gave me a little bit of credibility. I'm not some crazy guy chasing her and making up a story, but so she explained a little, and the dog was like super friendly, like came right up to me, was all over me. She's like, "Oh, she loves people. She doesn't like dogs so much." That's Suki. That is the same personality as Suki. She's never fond of dogs, love people. And so I was like, okay, so here we go. To me, that was a sign. And then I had also kind of asked for an additional sign if when I get to the beach, if I see dolphins, because sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were there, and they were as close as I've ever seen them to the shore, and they were
Wow.
slapping the water. One of them, slapping. I've got video of all this stuff. I'll probably put some of that up in this when we post this, so you can see some of this. A couple nights after that, I had another image of Suki again, middle of the night or it was early morning. I wasn't ready to get out of bed, and I had this vision. I had my eyes closed. It was for my third eye, like the vision inside your mind, like when you're dreaming or whatever. But I wasn't asleep. I was clearly awake. But I saw her sitting there as she always did, politely, but she was doing this with her paw. And I thought, is she waving goodbye? Like maybe she's now like shifting to another, whatever. I don't know. I don't pretend to know all that goes on in the spirit realm. I think it's all around us, but those are some of the things that the visions that I've had and experiences that I've had that I don't count those as coincidental anymore. I see those as messages, synchronicities, whatever. And there's so many others that I've had with numbers and seeing animals, and as I'm thinking about something and then looking up what that spirit means, because I do that now every time. Like, oh, I was walking and I saw a cat, a gray and white cat. I'm like, what does a gray and white cat mean? I would used to be like, well, this is a cool cat that came up and said hi, but I was thinking about Suki on that walk again because this was a couple days ago, and this gray and white cat comes up, and I look up the meaning. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. So it's just interesting when you start to open your heart and your mind to this kind of thing. It's almost you call it almost magic. It's so beautiful, and when you start to open to that and think about that and focus on that and put your attention on that versus the madness of the world, the chaos that's going around us, the financial challenges and things that we have, I just you like they say, your frequency lifts up. You
Mm-hmm.
can, and if you could just stay in that state, and that's the challenge we live in right now is, we're surrounded by a lot of challenges, and so it's hard to always stay there. But if you could stay in that state, it's like I said, it's like magic. It's just beautiful. You start to notice, the cloud structures and the colors of the sky and the slight rainbow pattern, in the clouds that are showing up because of the way the sun's hitting it. I mean, it's just all beautiful. The dolphins that are like coming and slapping the water and doing whatever, you just start to pay attention to those things. So,
It's very natural for us, isn't it? Because if we go back a few centuries, most of us have come from tribes or smaller communities. And if we talk about shaman, and I don't mean in terms of just any one indigenous culture, but shaman meaning someone that can connect with the natural world, we naturally look for signs and
mhm.
symbols all around us to give us clues and to allow us to be soul led, like to understand, okay, what's the message? So it's like another thing that happens on your spiritual awakening. So if other people start to notice that, yes, they're seeing numbers or synchronicities or hearing certain sounds or suddenly seeing a certain type of bird or animal or cat, there are kind of meanings behind it. And it is
Hmm.
natural for us. I mean, we've become detached from that natural rhythm and awareness over the last couple of centuries, especially through the industrial age. But it is very human. It is very natural to us to actually be doing what you have been describing.
Yeah, and even in my day-to-day life, I'm at work. I've emailed someone. I'm wondering what's going on. Are they okay? Is everything good? And somebody work related is talking about a different person, but the same name says, did you read such and such's email? I'm like, wait, is that a message for me? And I go, look, there's the email from the in my personal email from the person. So it's like, if you're listening and paying attention, it sounds like, oh, well, that's just coincidental. That would have been, what I would have looked at. But now when you open your mind, like, wait a minute, okay, let me go look. Oh, hey, and oh, everything's okay. Everything's good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like I said, it's magic if you just open your heart and mind to it. And that's why I really wanted to put this out there because there are a lot of challenges and it is tough to in the day to day. And especially if you don't, I think if you, and again, there's no judgment if you, not everybody wants to learn these lessons in this life and so on and so forth. But if you do, I just say it's beautiful. And I hope if that, I wish this for everyone, be open to this and to have these experiences because it really is beautiful. And this is coming from somebody that was pure science, pure, engineering, computers, most of my life, and threw all the other stuff out and said, "Oh, that's just hogwash." And then, like I said, a series of events, and now I'm like, "Oh, I'm open to everything. I give everything a chance. I don't
Mm-hmm.
close my mind to anything, but it is important to discern. I will say that to discern
Mm-hmm.
what is right for you in this life. And one of the things that I've learned is from a mentor, Emily Harrison, who led a group to Shasta that I went with. But one of the things that she taught in her Akashic Records class was a soul yes. And so it's something that I will, it's not something that's sacred to just that she can teach. It's for all of us. So I think at one of the podcasts I will teach that, but it's a way where you can, as you're quiet in meditation and you get some information and you want to validate, is this true for me? Is this right for me? Does this ring true for my life and what I'm here to learn and what I'm here to do? And so you can ask it that way. You can also say, is this true? That's fine too, but which I often do. But sometimes I'll say, is this true for me? Because sometimes I don't get an answer and I feel like that's okay. It may be true, but it's not for you yet. Or it may be wrong, but you're not ready to learn that yet. You have other things that you need to go on your path to get there. But it's basically just listening to your body. That's one of the ways that I think we can connect to our higher selves. It's not always a voice in our head. It'd be great if it was. I'm hoping for that, please. Or please. Anytime I'm ready for the voices, I'm not afraid of those anymore or thinking I'm crazy if I hear them. But oftentimes it's just subtle. It's like I said, a feeling that you have. And so you can find that what that soul yes is, and you can ask those questions that you're not sure about. And is this right for me? Or is this true to me for me? And you'll if you have that soul yes signal, which we'll talk about in a future podcast, and I'm sure you have some great ideas too. One of the things I'd like to do with this is to present tools for people if it feels resonates with them to use those tools in their life to help them, with the challenges they face. And that's one of them that I think has been really invaluable for me on this journey.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And I think you've also touched on a really nice point there that's important is that sometimes when you go through an awakening, it can feel a little lonely because other people that you are around, like your flock or your, family or friendship tribe as such, may not be awakening at the same speed as you or have very different journeys. So if that is the case, it can feel a little lonely for a while, but we are fortunate that in this day and age, there are lots of groups out there of like minded people. And sometimes it can take a little while to find the right group, or something that is soul aligned with you. So, once again,
Hmm.
developing your discernment to go, yeah, this meditation group fits, or maybe it doesn't. Try another one. Like, don't give up straight away. It's just, you've just got to find, your match. But there are now plenty of people on this journey, so even if it feels lonely for a little while, know that it's temporary, and know that in the unseen realms you're very supported in
Right.
terms of all the other beings there that are wanting to connect and are
Always.
supporting you. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
You're surrounded all the time, and you just have to. I think that a lot of people feel lonely. I've felt it. There's days where I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what am I doing? As I said, it's not just a straight line up. It's up and down and question, and then but that's what we're here to do. And I think those questioning moments are to clear that out finally, and and all of these doubts and things have to come to the surface, and you have to work through them. If you think you've worked through them, the universe will test you again and again and again to make sure you truly have worked it through, because you can't lie to your true nature, to your true self. Like that, I think that if you keep getting tested on something, then you maybe probably haven't really worked through it. And I'm talking to myself here, not for those, because if you keep getting those challenges that keep coming back, it's perhaps because you haven't fully learned the lesson you needed to, and felt it and let it go.
You've
So
probably been through a number of challenges because it's been a couple of years now that you've been on this awakening journey. Can you identify as one as your major challenge?
feel comfortable on the journey and the awakening, that the path that I'm on and I know is true to me, but still balance that in a practical way in the world around me and within the relationships, and learning how to mute myself a little bit, or dampen when I run across somebody, because my way is my natural way, and sometimes anyway, is to just when I come across something, I want to share it. I want I want to share with the world. I want everyone that I come across. Oh, this is so beautiful. Not everybody's ready for that message. So the biggest struggle for me is, and I keep getting challenged with, is somebody that's not on that path, and learning how to, like, okay, just throw a little tidbit out there. If they're not wanting to receive it, back off. Don't continue. Um, and so that prior to me kind of slowly getting, I mean, I was like a kindergartner, just I got to share everything, and you need to hear this because this is so important, and this will change the world, and if we all do this, and da 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 da. And the reality is not everybody's here for that. But it took me a while to do that, and because of that, it took me a long while, I would say, in my opinion. But again, I'm trying not to judge myself, but it took a little while, and it cost me some relationships and some damage to relationships in my life. And so I think that's been the biggest struggle. And because of that, you start to feel the loneliness. So you nailed it exactly once again. You wake up some days and you feel very lonely, but it's important to find people of like mind and go out, and if you feel something, you feel pulled to go somewhere, or you feel an opportunity to go meet some people, do it and see what happens. Because oftentimes, like when you and I met, it was an event in Joshua Tree, and I couldn't go during the week because I still have my job, and which I need, of course. I'm not saying I don't, but and so I couldn't go, and I was debating, okay, it's a Saturday, it's the last night that everybody's going to be there. It's a long drive to go out there. Question, should I go? But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go and just see. I felt a little calling, a little pull, like, hey, when if you go, something will happen. And things didn't. We'll talk about that in a future podcast. Absolutely, things happen. But then also, I made new friendships and connections, like this connection here, that is equally or more important than seeing something in the sky or feeling a connection with and so I guess I'm just saying to those of you out there that might be listening, um, you know, if if you have an opportunity, follow it and see what happens. Like
Mm.
if it's stay home and just, because it's more comfortable, I would ask you to push your, if you're feeling lonely, try not to seek out being lonely or continue that path. Go out and meet people, and you might make great connections and new connections and open up new doors and new friendships, and that'll help you on that journey. Because I think it's very important to find your tribe or people. I mean, your tribe, a tribe of people or people that have like mind that you can connect with and talk about this stuff. Because it's not every circle you can go into where you can talk about this stuff freely. Although I do try to. Those of you that are listening that know me sometimes know that I still interject my thoughts too much sometimes, but because I love you all and I care, and it's coming from a place of heart, from my heart, and that I want to make the world a better place. So just keep that in mind. But yes, I do tend to sometimes still interject and talk about things of this nature when people aren't always receptive right away. And in some ways, it has helped. There are people that were completely walled off to this that are slowly looking more. So I don't,
And it's all
I
part of
mean,
your soul alignment too, because if we listen to how we start, like you mentioned, like as a child, you enjoyed storytelling, you enjoy communication. And as you've become awakened and you've gone back into a soul led path, you're actually starting to, yeah, communicate, like share your stories, share your experiences. And that is part of your soul path. And all the little synchronicities around, like even starting up this podcast as a way of getting back into your soul alignment, which is what you realize as a child, sharing the stories, communicating. You're going back into that. And as this happens, you start to resonate with new people and other people start to leave. And yes, like you mentioned, that can be a little lonely sometimes when you realize, oh, I'm not resonating or having the same friendship circles anymore. They're changing. But
hmm
that's okay. And please, if anyone's listening, don't let the temporary loneliness or changes of friendships and relationships deter you
hmm
from staying on your soul alignment. It is just temporary. And if you stay on your path, you'll start to resonate with new people, attract them in, and attract in new opportunities. And life starts to look really different. And it's very, very fulfilling. And you always want to
hmm
make sure that you can get to the end of this human experience and look back with as fewer regrets as possible. And anyone that
Right.
seems to go on the soul awakening path has very few regrets. They start to actually realize that, yeah, everything had its moment, everything has its place, everything was in flow and synchronized and just how it was meant to be. So the end game is very, very rewarding, but there's ups and downs. Stick with it, stay on the path, and don't be scared of the temporary loneliness. It's just temporary, and you grow and you strengthen during that time.
Yes,
Yeah. So
I
thank
love
you
that.
so much for sharing your life journey so far. And I know there's so much more to deep dive into, but we can keep those for future podcasts because we've got heaps to share
Yes,
with everyone. And for those that have tuned in, I wish you a beautiful soul led day and thank you for your presence and listening to our journey.
thank you, Gina.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.